All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Chairman Show, sponsored by the Bethlehem Republican Committee. Today, we're going to be speaking with Theresa O'Neill. She's running for town board. But first, I'd like to just talk a little bit about deeds, not words. What do I mean by that? I mean that a lot of us in town are frustrated with what's happening in Town Hall and what's happening at the Highway Department. But it's important that we realize that the only way we're going to get change is through action. And when I talk about action, there's a lot of different aspects of that. One is donating to the campaigns of Theresa O'Neill and Craig Slurs, donating to the organization that supports them, which is the Bethlehem Republican Committee, coming out and knocking on doors with us when we go out and talk to the community. So right now, we're printing up 10,000 pieces of literature, 5,000 for Theresa, 5,000 for Craig, and we're going to be knocking on doors from mid-September all the way through Election Day, talking to residents, getting their feedback, letting them know what we stand for and what we're about. And the more people that are willing to come out with us, hand out those pieces of literature, talk about what we represent, and get that message out to the community, the more effective their campaigns are going to be and the better they're going to do on November 7th. So donations, knocking on doors. We have a 9:23 event. It's a golf event in the morning, and then we have a reception in the afternoon. So whether you play golf and you want to play in the morning, or whether you're not a golfer and you just want to come to the reception after, please support that event. Those dollars help support the campaigns of these candidates. So any little support that you can give us, donations, knocking on doors, coming to events, sharing our social media, make sure that it's action-based. We can talk all we want, but in the end, the only thing that's going to bring change is our actions. That takes sacrifice, that takes engagement. Let's do that to give these candidates the best chance to win on November 7th. So with that, I would like to introduce Theresa O'Neill, who's running for town board. We're very happy to have her today. Theresa, can you tell us a little bit about your background in Bethlehem, kind of when you got here and what you've been doing since then?
I have been living in Bethlehem close to 30 years. I moved here because of the standards of education which I wanted my children to have. I work and raised my family, and they had a beautiful education.
Did they go through the Bethlehem Central School District? Or?
They went through the Bethlehem, so they went through the Bethlehem Central School District. They went through Slingerland's. They both graduated. They both have their college degrees. One's still working on a college degree, so they did quite well for themselves.
Fantastic.
And that's what I wanted.
Yeah, and we want to make sure that we give that to future generations. So
Correct.
We think about all the great stuff that we had. I was born here in 1978. My dad moved his family here in 1971. He called it Camelot when he came here. He moved here from Sherman Street in Albany.
Oh, okay.
And, for him, it was like this amazing upgrade in the quality of life. And, it was a deep red town back then, deep Republican town. And it was one of the nicest places in the Northeast. And, when we were kids, we were on our bikes all day long. We were playing ball. And we never thought about, crime or taxes or any of the other challenges that we're facing today. We just had a great childhood, and a lot of us grew up to be very successful. And we look back on kind of growing up in the town of Bethlehem, and we want to make sure that we give that to future generations. So that's why we do what we do, right? That's why I run the party and why you're running for office.
That's exactly it. When you're a parent, you want your kids to have better than what you had.
Yeah.
And that's what your strive is, and that's what my kids are doing. They're actually doing quite well. And that's what you want for your kids. You want the best for them.
Yep, that's great. So tell me about career stuff. What did you, so you've been here for 30 years. What did you do in your career?
In my career, I worked quite a different positions. I worked for the Albany County Mental Health Department. I worked in a law office for almost 5 years. And after that, I ended up being picked up by the Albany Police Department. They were canvassing, and I did the usual testing for the department, and I ended up working a little bit over 24 years for the Albany Police.
24 years. Now tell me about that experience. What was that like? A police officer in the city of Albany for 24 years. Talk about some of those experiences.
Sometimes it was very interesting. Sometimes it was very challenging.
Yeah.
They ended up with me and the other ladies that I was working with, the female officers. There was, I tell everybody, how many females were there? When I went in, there was only 19 of us, and there was 340 personnel. So there was quite a bit of getting used to the change with the regard to personnel. But let me tell you, I couldn't work with a better group of guys.
Yeah.
They, on one hand, when we had different situations, we had sexual assaults, and we had child abuse, and we had domestics.
Yeah.
They found that I had a little bit more de-escalating when it came to situations.
Yeah.
And I was usually called in on certain cases because of that fact.
Yeah.
Which benefited everybody because it made everything go a little bit smoother.
Sure. So I was never a police officer, but I did retail security for a couple of years, and de-escalation is a huge thing,
Yes,
right?
it
Because
is.
it's not all about theft. Sometimes it's the angry person screaming at the cashier,
Yes.
and you're worried that it's going to hit a tipping point where there's going to be physical violence. And one of the best things you can do is apply some of those de-escalation techniques
Right.
to take the air out of the balloon, to get people to just calm down a little bit and become more rational.
Well, this is it. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's challenging. I mean,
Yeah.
I've gone to auto accidents where kids were involved, and
Yeah.
of course the parents in the car with them, and the parents very upset over the situation, and they're just adding to the situation, and you try to pull them aside and get them to talk to you
Yeah.
to redirect them so that the fire department and everyone can take care of what's going on there at the
Yeah.
scene. So it benefits everybody, and everything that I had, every situation, most of them had very positive outcomes.
So there was good days and there was bad days, but overall, did you feel a sense of you were making an impact and that you were serving the community in a positive way?
Yes. I had quite a few people call me back and ask me to swing by and have a talk with them. I also had quite a few letters of recommendation from residents that I had gone to house calls with. They wrote letters. I had chiefs write letters that wrote letters of recommendation with regards to the paperwork and things that I had handled in the past.
Yeah.
And I was quite surprised, but it was very rewarding too.
Now, as we know, Albany at one time was a beautiful city, a safe city, a well-run city. In 2014, Kathy Sheehan won the mayoral race, and it's pretty much been a dramatic downslide from that moment. Does it kind of break your heart to see the shape that Albany is in under Kathy Sheehan compared to what it used to be decades ago?
It does, and
Yeah.
I have people, family, friends that still live in Albany, and they are devastated. They cannot believe what is happening to Albany and how the quality of life has gone down in Albany, and how before that she could walk down Central Avenue and go shopping and not have to worry about anything and go to the jewelry store or
Oh,
go
yeah.
to another store. Those stores are all boarded up. They're all closed.
Yep, all closed. There were riots on Central Avenue where a lot of the glasses got smashed, a lot of the businesses got looted and robbed. And Kathy Sheehan said that, the police should generally take a step back and let that happen. And there's a lot of kind of criminal behavior that occurred with impunity, where there was no punishments doled out, there was no arrest made, and that's just it's untenable, and it's one of the biggest reasons why Albany's going downhill, right? You have a spiraling crime problem, you have a spiraling drug problem, you have a spiraling homelessness and poverty problem. And what that does is it drives out the business owners, it drives out the wealthy, and so you get this kind of race to the bottom where everything just unravels. Because as you know, if you don't have investment in the community, if you don't have business owners, if you don't have economic opportunity, you have no hope, no choice, no chance to succeed.
Correct. I recently had an opportunity. I was talking to a friend. He actually works down on Washington Avenue, and he told me to take a drive down there, and we got talking. And I drove down Central Avenue, and I did not recognize it. Didn't recognize it.
Yeah.
It was pitiful. It was pitiful.
When I was a kid, my mom and I used to go shopping on Central Ave. Tons of beautiful shops. Christmas time, we'd go down there. Even take the bus. At one time, we were down to one car. My dad would take the car. My mom and I would hop on the bus and go down.
Me too.
I would never do that in a million years.
Oh, we used to go down to Rosen's.
Yeah.
And the Tinkle shop was down there, and the jewelry store was down there.
Yeah.
And then there was the men's suit store that was down there. I can't remember the name of it. It was beautiful. You could go down the makeup store,
Yeah.
and the school system was right on the avenue. Kids were walking up and down the avenue. You had no fear of somebody coming up and doing something that was could physically do something to you when you were
you really
walking.
just weren't worried about crime at all.
you
It was
weren't.
safe. The Albany police were patrolling, and they didn't tolerate any nonsense.
And the thing is that when the officers went to a scene and there was an incident going on, they knew that when they dealt with the situation, they knew that based on the situation, if they could either de-escalate it and everybody went their ways, or if it was a penal law that was being coming into play, that they could take it to the court system and the court system would address it.
Correct, and that we would get dangerous people off the streets, and that the leadership of the city would have their backs, right? Because let's be honest with ourselves. There are times in situations as a police officer where you don't have time to do a lot of analysis. You have to act to save lives.
You have 2 seconds.
And and there is no second guessing. You have to act to save lives, and you would expect that you would always get the benefit of the doubt from the leadership of that city. And unfortunately, I don't think that the police feel like they have the backing of the leadership of the city right now. I think everything that they do gets questioned, second guessed, Monday morning quarterback, armchair quarterback, whatever you want to call it. And that makes it very difficult to do your job, because then you have more hesitation. You're worried about everything you do, or you're going to get tossed behind bar, right? So then you're not doing the life-saving things that you really should be doing. That's part of police work. You're taking a step back and you're letting more happen that really you shouldn't let happen. But that all goes to the top. That goes to leadership. And, I think about, okay, so we see Albany in a state of decline, and a lot of people are moving out of Albany. Now, some people are leaving New York State. We know New York has the second highest out-migration in the country, next to California. So California and New York, two deeply blue states, have the highest levels of out-migration. But unfortunately, one of the things that we face is people move from Albany to Bethlehem because they're trying to get away from the worst of the worst, and yet they still vote for the same policies that destroyed Albany. And so what we're asking people to do is forget about party affiliation, take a step back, and really look at what works and what doesn't, and start voting for what works. Because if people in Bethlehem vote the same way as the people have been voting in Albany for the last couple of decades, Bethlehem is going to become an extension of Albany, and none of us want to see that happen, because then we'll be moving somewhere else. And I think
it's slowly creeping this way.
it's slowly creeping that way. I mean, we saw the Tasty Freeze incident the other day where
ATM.
some people from Albany came to steal an ATM. Luckily, the BPD was able to make arrests. But the reality is crime is on the rise in Bethlehem. We do have a lot more challenges than we used to have, and it's only going to get worse if we don't take a different approach. So I definitely think it's really important that every voter, Democrat, Republican, Conservative, Independent, NOP, takes a step back and says, what works, and let's vote for what works. You have an agenda. The Bethlehem Republican Party has a platform that's been out for 18 months. We tell people exactly what we stand for, and these are time-tested methods that made Bethlehem one of the greatest places in the Northeast for 150 years. And what we're saying is let's get back to these time-tested methods. This experimentation of the last 2 decades simply hasn't worked. So with that, we talked about your background. So you retired as a police officer. What did you do after that?
Well, actually, I was, last couple of years when I was working, I was actually going to school at night. And I was going to school at night and getting my education for nursing. I ended up retiring. I had my first degree for nursing, my associates, and I continued on and got my bachelor's for nursing. Now I'm a nurse.
And how was that?
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I mean, to me, you're kind of an embodiment of the American dream, in that, you were able to serve your community as a police officer for 24 years. You retired, but during the last few years, you had that kind of work ethic matched with the opportunity to go to night school and start learning about a new career, so that you could wrap up your law enforcement career and then transition into another rewarding career, serving people, helping people as a nurse. And so, I feel like that's a great track record of service and experience that really credentials you to be a fantastic town board member. And I know it's something that all of us are really hoping for, we're supporting, we're working towards. I just mentioned your campaign literature is coming in middle of next week. We're going to be knocking on doors. We're going to be talking to people in town. We're going to be talking to them about your political philosophy, your agenda, and what you would do. And just like I said with Craig, your record of experience, it's not a hypothetical, right? It's proven. It's the same thing with Craig, right? Craig's been serving his community for 38 years, police officer 21 years, firefighter for 38 years. You guys stand behind your word. If you get in there and you don't deliver on your promises, then vote us out, right? Because we're going to deliver what we say. We're not like others that say one thing and then get in there and do something else. We're going to get in there and we're going to deliver on all our promises. And we ask you to give us that one chance, and we will prove that. If we don't stand behind every word, then vote us out, right? Because accountability is important in public office.
Correct.
So with that, what was your motivation to run? When did you say to yourself, you know what, I'm really thinking about running for town board?
I was thinking about it for a while. I saw things changing, and they were slowly changing. And I don't think anyone really realized how things were changing in the town, and they weren't changing for the better.
Yeah.
They weren't changing for the better. They weren't changing to help, with the families, with the kids.
It wasn't helping the residents. It was kind of agenda based for the people that are in office.
It's special.
Yeah.
Special. It was a special group that it was getting favoritism.
Yeah.
And I was like, what about the rest of the community? Did they not think about the rest of the community and everybody else and living here and how this is going to affect everybody else?
So I think a great example, and I'll go through a few examples, because I know in your platform agenda, you talk about how important it is to take a stakeholder approach and to listen to the people that are impacted by the things happening. So I wanted to walk through a couple of things because I think they're great examples and you can speak to that. Do you remember the debate a few years ago when all of a sudden the supervisor and the town board members, other than Jim Foster, but everybody else, they wanted to ditch the dive tank in upstate New York and they wanted to put in a mini slide tank. Do you remember that debate?
No, I don't remember that one.
So the dive tank had a crack in it, and it needed repair, right? A few $100,000 of repair, and all of a sudden, the supervisor and the town board members decided that this was a perfect opportunity to plow under the dive tank and build a mini slide tank. So get rid of the dive boards, just put in little slides in a new tank.
Are you talking about the dive pool?
Yes.
Oh, I thought tank. I'm thinking something else. Okay,
Yeah, they call it the dive tank. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Diving pool we always call it.
Yeah. So you don't recall this?
I do
Okay,
recall some of it.
You
Yes.
just didn't remember the tank part.
When you
Yeah.
said tank, I'm
Yeah. So dive tank is what the insiders call it or whatever. Dive tank, dive pool, doesn't matter. But yeah, they got this idea that what the heck with the dive tank? We're going to plow under it. We're going to put in a mini slide pool. They ran a survey in town and they asked people, this is the amount that it's going to cost to replace the dive tank. Do you want to spend that money, or do you want to spend new dollars on putting in a mini slide pool? The survey, I believe, was 67% for repairing the dive tank at any cost. So 2 out of every 3 residents that responded to the survey said, please save the dive tank. They discarded that survey. They moved forward anyways with the proposal to plow under and put in the mini slide pool. There were multiple town board meetings on it. People were screaming and yelling, please don't do this to us. Now, for anyone who doesn't understand the significance of the dive tank, it's one of only 3 dive tanks, public dive tanks in upstate New York. It was put in here in the 1970s, so it's been around for 50 years. It's a rite of passage in a major institution of the town of Bethlehem. So every kid that's ever gone to the town park and grown up through the town park, at some point in their life, they were ready for the dive tank.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's time to jump in. It's time to do my first dive. All of those things. And so for people like me and you, people who have been here for decades, it was like ripping our guts out. Like, this is what Bethlehem is, right? You got to respect the traditions and the institutions. what I always say to the supervisor and the town board members, they don't really listen to me, but I tell them is, Bethlehem was great before you got here. You didn't make Bethlehem great. You took over when it was already great, right? So luckily we ultimately ended up prevailing in this battle. But to me, it was so shocking that they were ready to just discard one of the town jewels that we have because selfishly they preferred to have a mini slide pool rather than a dive tank. And it just, you see these stuff. So that battle was totally unnecessary. And 2 out of every 3 stakeholders said, no, please repair the dive tank. But they still tried their very best to get rid of the dive tank and put in the slide pool. So that transitions to the recent road diet debate a couple years ago. So as you know, the supervisor and the town board is really big on climate change and sustainability. They think everybody should be walking and biking everywhere. Forget about the fact that it snows 4 months of the year and, it rains a lot of days. And you
work 20, 25 minutes away.
And you work in East Greenbush or Waterford or Troy or whatever. Forget about all that. They want everybody out of their cars and on their bikes, right? So they came up with this idea called the Complete Streets Initiative in the Delaware Ave corridor, where they were going to chop 2 lanes on each side down to 1 lane on each side and put in bike lanes on each side. Now remember, there's already a bike trail that goes to Albany. So the whole idea that, we need some bike lanes on the road and we need to put bikes 3 feet away from cars whizzing by.
Duplicating. You're just duplicating.
Duplicating, but really for them, it was a mechanism to cause havoc, cause traffic, and force people out of their cars. The backlash from
sitting in traffic all that time with 1 lane.
Terrible. Less time with your family.
Gas.
More people are going to have to defer and go around to 9W, right? So now you're taking traffic off of that corridor. So there's 18,000 cars that go through that corridor every day. 18,000.
Oh, just a few.
Yeah, just a few. 18,000 cars that go through that corridor every day. So if you suddenly say, I'm going to cut it down to 1 lane, and all of a sudden there's 30 minutes of traffic coming into Bethlehem each night, then you're going to have a situation where cars go around to 32 and 9W. If they're going around to 32 and 9W, all of those businesses are losing those cars driving by, stopping by for a bite to eat, stopping by the Delaware Plaza, purchasing things, groceries, whatever it may be. So 41 businesses came out and said, please don't do this to us. It doesn't make any sense. We don't want it. We like the road the way it is. Repave it, put in new sidewalks, but please do not do this major project and cut down to 1 lane. And what did they do? They moved forward anyways, right? It ended up going to a referendum.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Sounds familiar.
It went to a referendum, and they lost 53 to 47, which is shocking because it's a deep blue town, and Democrats usually win everything. But people at least woke up to the fact that this was a terrible idea, and it was going to hurt the businesses and cause havoc. But what I want to tie this to, because it's a very important part of your campaign, is you talk about listening and stakeholder management, and this is a perfect example of they wanted to do it, so they did everything they could to cram it down our throats, even though 41 businesses in that corridor asked them not to do it.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. So what would your plan be if there was an idea about a project happening and it was a consideration? Forget about bike lanes, but let's just say there's a consideration of a project. What would you do in that situation?
What would I do?
Yeah.
I would probably see like a survey or something to that effect to the people that whoever is going to be affected in that area.
Yeah.
See what the positive and negative with regards to the change would be.
Yeah.
And then you kind of like when you're doing something, you see what's the advantages and what's the disadvantages.
Cost-benefit analysis, whatever it may be.
Right.
But this is called stakeholder analysis, right?
Right.
So you listen to their feedback and analyze.
Don't just do it and say, here, this is going to happen.
Right.
This is going to happen. No, that's not the American way. It's advantages and disadvantages, and then you come back and discuss it and see which would be beneficial for everybody as a whole.
Correct.
Not just the certain person here or certain person there.
But I think what's important about stakeholder management is realizing that if you're going to do a project in the Delaware Ave corridor, the most important people are the people affected in that corridor, right?
Correct.
So yes, you are going to think about as a whole, but the truth is somebody living in South Bethlehem is not going to have the same impact regarding a project in the Delaware Ave corridor as My Place or Del Mar Beverage or the Dunkin' Donuts there or Delaware Plaza, all these businesses along that corridor. I mean, every one of them that I know of.
Or the people that travel, like I said, the people that travel that corridor going to and from work.
Yeah.
To go down and hop on the highway.
Yeah.
That's their route. And then you're just adding time and you're adding congestion and you're adding smoke from the, it's not positive.
I don't understand how you can have a situation where town hall is trying to steamroll the stakeholders in the area of that particular project. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. To me, if you're the supervisor or a town board member, you're a public servant. You work for the town. It's not like you and your agenda and you're going to cram it down everybody's throat because you have the power. That's not what it is. It's you were entrusted to manage this town in a positive way so their health, wealth, and safety would improve and get better. Your slogan is always health, wealth, and safety. That's what we're talking about, right? We're saying, how do we make things better for these businesses? How do we make things better for the residents going through this corridor? And to just dismiss and discard their desires and their wishes for the town, to me, is counterintuitive and almost bizarre.
It's if you think about it, it's actually not. They're not doing their job.
Yeah, they're not doing their job.
They're not doing the job for the community. They're doing their job for their own
for themselves, really.
Themselves.
I mean, their agenda, their desires, their feelings are being imposed on everybody else. And actually, that's not the model of public service. Public service is you get elected by a majority of people, and then you represent the interests of the whole town, right? That's the way it's supposed to work.
Correct.
And I don't know if it's just the Democrats have been in power for 20 years and, power, ego, whatever it is that kind of corrupts people's behavior. It just doesn't seem to be beneficial for the town and what we expect as residents. I don't expect something that's going to harm my quality of life being forced on me by the town hall. But yet we're seeing more and more of this. So we talked about the dive tank. We talked about the road diet in the Delaware Ave corridor. One other one that I'd like to raise, going back to the stakeholder management thing, because I think stakeholder management is what public service is all about, and that's one of the biggest reasons why people are supporting your campaign, because you're saying, hey, look, it's not about me and what I want to get done. It's about what I want to get done for you. I'm going to be your representative.
What do you want?
Exactly.
What do you need? What do you want? Just like raising a family. What do you want?
Exactly.
What do you need?
Yep.
Okay, tell me.
Exactly. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was there's a low-income housing project down in the Selkirk Reserve that was opposed almost universally by everyone that lived in Selkirk. I mean, I was on those calls. I was on the planning board meetings. I was at the town board meetings. Selkirk was almost universally opposed to this. But this is how it went. So we had a building moratorium where we said nobody can build anything. Then they wanted to do this low-income housing project. So they made an exception to their own moratorium. They passed an exception that said only this one time. So you have local developers that are making their livelihood on developing real estate. We said to them, nope, you can't build anything. Your whole life's on hold. You can't make a penny. And then we brought in a developer from Ohio who was a big Cuomo donor. They gave $275,000 to the Andrew Cuomo campaign. We hired them. We gave them an exception to our own town moratorium, and we let them put in a low-income housing a 96-unit low-income housing project that nobody in the area wanted.
And I understand there was like a lawsuit or
3 lawsuits.
Yes.
3 lawsuits filed by people in that area saying, this is outrageous, we don't want this, don't do this to us. The people of Selkirk, particularly the people that live near the Selkirk Reserve, are the town stakeholders for that project. That project should have never happened until everybody was able to give input, and that was analyzed. If everybody, or the majority, let's say 85, 90% of people in Selkirk were opposed to the project, why are our elected leaders jamming it down their throats? That doesn't make sense to me. What are your thoughts on that?
Money.
Certainly money.
Money.
But I mean, what do you think about like the integrity, the honesty, the transparency of what they did there to the residents of Selkirk? How do you feel about that?
I think it's terrible.
Yeah.
I think it's terrible.
And what would you have done if you were in town hall?
I just like I said before, I would have taken in somehow getting input back from the residents, see how it would affect them, how it would affect the roadway, and so forth.
So
what would be the benefits or what would be the disadvantages? And these people have moved there, and that's basically a residential area.
Yeah.
And you're putting on an apartment complex.
Yeah. Apartment complex, low-income housing. So specifically, you're lowering the median and mean income in the town of Selkirk, right? And we know that income is a driver of quality of life. As incomes rise, quality of life rises. As income goes down, quality of life goes down. So if you intentionally lower the median and mean income of a town, you're driving down the quality of life. That's just a fact of life. That's the reality.
Correct.
The other thing is, all of these new kids are being pumped into the RCS school district, right? So this is something that they weren't ready for. The RCS school district already has several challenges that residents have expressed through all these meetings. And so again, just bizarre behavior by town hall, a lack of stakeholder management, something that you have promised in your campaign to deliver to residents.
Correct.
And I want to be clear, there's a lot of different ways to get feedback. You can do surveys, you can go door to door and talk to people, or you can have meetings. You can have kind of town hall style meetings where you say, hey, I'm going to be at the Bethlehem Grange on Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. If you're concerned about this project, please come in, let's talk about it. We'll walk you through what our plans are. You can give us our feedback, and then we're going to do analysis based on that. So, we have a lot of ways of getting feedback from the town, but I feel like, A, they're not utilized, so they're underutilized. And B, I get the sense a lot of times that town hall wants to give the appearance like they're listening, but they just do what they want to do anyways. So the road diet got voted down 53-47, and they're already back talking about another road diet. They have their council, and they're exploring options. It seems like they're never going to get up until they check the box, until they get whatever agenda item is that they want to get crammed down the throats of residents. And I think if we talk about change, we need change there. We need to start listening to our residents. We need to be public servants. We need to do what the residents are asking us to do, not what we feel like doing or what's convenient for us.
Correct. It's history repeating itself, just like everything. It's history repeating itself. It's, I want this, okay, this is going to happen. I want this is going to happen.
Right.
And here they go again. It's history repeating itself.
And it's never going to stop until we elect better people.
Correct.
It's never, if you think that the supervisor and the town board members are suddenly going to change their approach, that's not going to happen. If you don't like the direction of the town.
If you don't like the direction, it's your choice. You vote.
Yeah, and you got to vote for the only viable alternative to what's happening, which is Theresa O'Neill for town board and Craig Slurs for highway superintendent. That's the only way you're going to get change. We can't deal in platitudes. We can't deal in gimmicks. We have to deal in policy making, and I think Theresa and Craig have made clear what their policy positions are, what their political philosophy is, and what they're going to do if they're in office. So Theresa, just a couple other things I want to walk through on your agenda. We talk about safe streets, right? We saw what just happened at Tasty Freeze.
Correct.
Right? We've seen some other things happen on the rail trail, other incidents in town. What's your plan when you get in for public safety?
Well, the thing with the Bethlehem Police Department, I would make sure that there was sufficient staffing.
Yeah.
24/7.
Yep.
I know there was a bump in the road, I think, at one point.
There's still a bump in the road. They don't have everything they want. I know that for a fact.
Okay.
And so, stakeholder management, public safety, it fits together, right?
Right.
Sit down with the BPD. Ask them what they need.
Correct. And then to make sure that they have, I tell everyone, to make sure they have the tools that they need in order to do the job, the equipment, the tools, whatever they need to do the job. If you don't have the tools, how can you do the job?
Yeah.
And then to make sure that everybody gets trained the same, they receive the same training.
And that they can do their job, right? And that they know
Right.
they have backing from someone like you, that they can go out there and they can execute their job to the best of their ability, and you're always going to stand behind them when they're doing that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. It does make a difference. And if they're not standing, if the administration is not standing behind them,
Yeah.
all you have to do is look to Albany.
Yeah.
You can see what's happening right now.
Right.
And with my old job in the Albany Police Department and my current job right now, and I tell everybody, both of them are always safety first.
Yeah.
You want your family, you want you, and you want your community, you want you want to be safe.
Yeah.
And then
Right. So one of the reasons why McDonald's left the South End, everybody thinks it's economic, and certainly economic is part of it, but it's also security concerns. Like, the public safety has eroded so dramatically in the South End that, employees were getting attacked, employees were getting verbally assaulted. Police cars were there almost every single day. And McDonald's said, enough. We're not going to put our employees at risk here. We're not going to do this any longer. It's not just the economic prospects of not being able to turn a large profit. As we know, McDonald's is a multi-billion-dollar organization. They probably could absorb very small losses, even though that's not typically what businesses do. But the public safety aspect is huge. If you don't have public safety, you can't have a vibrant business environment. You don't get capital investment.
And if you look on Madison Avenue, that was on the corner of Pearl and Madison. If you look on Madison Avenue and see what businesses have closed up now, what was that Italian restaurant that had been there for years
Yeah.
and years
Yeah.
and years and years? Because you can't have customers or patrons coming in and just looking over their shoulder to make sure they make it in the building for their dinner.
I think in that area there's probably more, but there's two iconic places I think that tanked in the last 10 years. One is Lombardo's, right? Lombardo's went out. Lombardo's was a favorite of everybody, including myself. And there was also Gasberry's over there that also tanked.
It's sad.
and
It's tradition. They were there for years and years. They were family businesses. They were beautiful. Inside was beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
It is.
Really is.
I've never seen more open storefronts. So many institutions. Andy's Deli went out. Bombers just went out on Lark Street. It's just one after another. It's very hard to turn a profit when wealth is leaving and the public safety situation is deteriorating. It's just not a sustainable system, right? You have to be safe, you have to be clean, and you have to be attractive for new business investment. And if you don't get that, everything kind of goes in a downward spiral.
Right,
into
you're
the
in your
abyss.
business. You're trying to do your business. You're working in there. You're making your food. You're preparing everything for your customers, and then to turn around and have to worry about your customer trying to get in the front door.
Yeah,
They're not going to be coming.
right, exactly.
They're not going to be coming.
Exactly.
They're going to say, "I'm sorry, I'm going up to Colony or wherever it is to buy my stuff."
Yeah, exactly. And then when those businesses go out, you don't have those jobs, so you don't have the economic opportunity for the community, right?
And you can see it right now.
And what happens? You get more drugs, you get more people sitting around, right? I mean, it's terrible, poverty, all of it.
It's sad. It
Yeah.
really is.
And I think what I want people to realize is, yes, Albany right now is much worse than Bethlehem. But if Bethlehem pursues the same policies, ultimately we'll end up in the same spot. And I want people to have that foresight, because I think a lot of people think like, well, Bethlehem's still a great place. What's the problem? Well, the problem is that we are heading in the wrong direction. We've lost hundreds of acres of open spaces. Taxes are sky high. People are moving out. We have more open storefronts than we've ever had. We have more crime than we've ever had. We have all these bad signs. Is it as bad as Albany? No, it's not as bad as Albany. But will we eventually get there if we don't change course? Yes, we will. So this is why it's so important to talk about these policies, what they do and what we would do, to compare and contrast and talk about what works and what doesn't, so that voters are educated. when they step into that booth on November 7th and they know to vote for you and vote for Craig.
And that said, voters up here are very well educated.
Yeah.
This area is very well educated. They need, I know life goes on.
But we need to do better because they're still electing Democrats.
I know, and this is it. It's. I know life happens, and you're running around doing things with the family. You've got your own little
Social circle
that you're going in, and you don't realize what's going on until all of a sudden it like hits you in the face.
Yeah.
Well, it's hitting you in the face now.
Yeah. What I fear is that it's hit us in the face, right? We're willing to sacrifice hundreds of hours because we see what's coming and we see the decline and we love Bethlehem and we want to preserve it for future generations. But I'm not sure it's hitting everybody in the face yet.
No, it's
and
not.
I think there's a lot of people that, kind of do have their head in the sand. They say, well, it's still okay. It's still decent. Where's the major issues? And what we're trying to say is we've seen this episode before, right? I visited San Francisco for years. The San Francisco of 20 years ago compared to the San Francisco of today are like two different cities. Albany is two different cities. Chicago is two different cities.
Yeah.
LA is two different cities. Like all of these places, Seattle is two different cities. Mm-hmm. All of these places have gotten dramatically worse because of Democrat policies, left-wing policies, high taxes, soft on crime, sanctuary city. All of this stuff has led to the decline. Creates a housing shortage, so then you get more homelessness. All of these policies add up to kind of the results that you get. And I think you and I and Craig and others on the committee, we see what's ahead if we don't change course. And so we're talking about the policies now. We're trying to get people to wake up and say, let's avoid that. Let's not become Albany. Let's not become Portland, Oregon. Let's keep Bethlehem great. And this is the kind of the roadmap to do that.
Yeah, it's your choice. You're at the fork in the road.
We're at a huge fork in the road.
You're at the fork in the road. You got to choose the best road. I have family here, and that's why, like I said, I stepped up to the plate, and I think I would be very beneficial for the town board to have a new
perspective, a different agenda, better ideas. I mean, all of it I think is important. We were talking about we see the fork in the road. Unfortunately, some people have already taken the other path. So I heard from a good friend of mine. Her name's Amanda. I'll leave her last name out of it. But she reached out to me and said, look, I'm really embarrassed to tell you this, but we moved. We moved to Florida. I took my whole family. New York's totally out of control. Democrats are totally out of control. I'm terrified of where it's heading. And, so we made the decision to go. And I hate to say it, but hundreds of people have made that decision. And, now we're at a time where we're at a tipping point. If we don't get some new leadership and some change, more people are going to move. And it's just going to be, again, this race to the bottom where all the wealth, all the Republicans, all the money, everybody moves out, and all you're left with is Democrat rule, bad policies, poverty, drugs, crime, all that stuff. So we got to make changes now rather than later. A couple other things I want to talk about before we wrap up. You talk about vibrant business environment and forming a business council. This jumps off from your stakeholder management thing. Tell me about your ideas here. How do you want to manage the business environment?
With the business environment, I think it should be an environment that would be beneficial for the growth of the business. Lowering the taxes, lowering regulations to help the business. Because if you have businesses here, businesses benefit themselves, but they also benefit the community.
Yeah.
The economy and so forth. And I don't think people realize that. They do, because then you have teenagers that go looking for jobs and they need a waitress or something when they're going to school. So it helps the community. And small businesses are the foundation. They're the foundation.
Absolutely.
So very beneficial.
So you were talking about a business council where you kind of get some business leaders together and you discuss, it's a give and take, and you figure out how can we improve the business environment, how can we help you turn bigger profits, create more economic opportunity, hire more people, and let's get some of these storefronts at the Delaware Plaza and others filled, so we can have that kind of vibrant business environment that's allowing Bethlehem to operate at its very best.
And benefit
Yeah.
Bethlehem.
Yep. Open spaces, I think that is really just kind of getting the taxes down, getting the regulatory burden off the private property owners, so these families that have owned these big parcels of forests and farms for so long can hold on to them and maintain them at no cost to the taxpayer, right?
Correct. It's amazing. You're talking about open spaces, and they ended up finding all this money to turn around and buy all this different land.
Right. So in 2014, I mean, taxes have been going steadily up for 20 years. But in 2014, John Clarkson dramatically raised the taxes on undeveloped land. And raising the taxes on undeveloped land created huge tax bills for these people that own these large parcels. And these parcels have been in the families for years and years and years.
And they're older people. They're not young.
And they're land rich, but they're cash poor.
Correct.
So what did they end up doing? They had to sell. They couldn't afford the tax bills. So what I'm encouraged with is your program to get the tax burden down, get the regulatory burden down, so these people can keep the property in the family and maintained at no expense to the taxpayer.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And lastly, tell me about your plan on improved senior services. So I know you've done a lot of work in the community, talking to seniors and talking to people about kind of what's available and where the gaps are. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I have a number of people that live in my area that are they're seniors, and they were telling me about what's available, and I decided to actually take a walk and see what was available, like in town hall, and I was quite surprised at it's the size of a closet. I just desk to desk in there, it's so small. And I think I was telling you is that I decided to compare Bethlehem to Coxsackie, and I'm like, and Ravenna. I mean, we have so much population, they have more available for their seniors than what we have here. And I was quite surprised at that. The seniors are the people that built this town. They are the ones that should be reaping, the benefits from, building this town.
They've paid their dues. They've earned it.
Correct. And if they need a ride, or if they need a meal, or if something happens, there should be something available for them to help them out. I know one woman I was talking to, as a matter of fact, she was telling me about meals. She was going around trying to get assistance because she just needed it for a short time.
Yeah.
There was nothing available in this area. She had to go outside this community in order to get assistance for a meal. I was so shocked at that. So that's my take on seniors. That they need to do something a little bit more for the people that the seniors in this community.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure they're going to change their ways, but hopefully if you get elected, you can influence them to do better for our seniors and deliver better senior services. Because, these are the people that built Bethlehem. Bethlehem's a great town because of them, and it's certainly something that we should, keep our promises to them.
Correct.
Okay, so with that, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Just to say that I would appreciate your vote when it comes November, and it's your one vote and it's your choice. And after listening to us today, I'm hoping you take everything into account and make the right decision for the community.
Yes, absolutely. It's all about voting. Like I said before, of course we want your support. Come to the golf event on 9/23. Come to the reception if you're not a golfer. Make a donation to their campaign. Come knock on doors with us. Share their social media. Follow their pages, whatever it might be. Those are all the things we need to do to reach as many people as possible and get as many people out on November 7th. But in the end, no matter what, you have to go vote. The votes are the only thing that matters on November 7th. You could talk a good game, you could come to our events, but if you don't vote, then it does, then that part doesn't matter. And in the end, the tallies are somebody has more than the other person, and one person wins, one person loses. So please go out and vote. Like I've said before, if you're somebody who hasn't voted in several elections, or maybe you're registered to vote but you've never voted, reach out to us. We'll walk you through everything you need to know. Don't have that anxiety or fear that you're going to get to the voting place and not know what to do. You can message us. We'll meet you out for coffee. We'll come to your house. We'll walk through everything that you need to do so that you're educated and prepared to show up that day and cast your vote for Theresa O'Neill or Craig Slurs. We don't want voter anxiety to come between you and casting that vote. We're all living under this governance right now. We're all displeased with what's happening, and the only way we can change it is by voting. The more people that come out on November 7th and vote for these two great candidates, the better chance we have at getting better governance and charting a better path forward. So with that, we thank you very much for listening today. We hope to see you out on the campaign trail. Please come to our 923 event. All of our information is up on the Bethlehem Republican Committee Facebook page, and it'll also be shared to Theresa O'Neill and Craig Slur's pages. We really hope that you give us your vote on November 7th and that we get these two great people into office. Thank you.